Hello, my name is David Webb, and this is a video for Dweebovision. I'm a Scrabble grandmaster, and in this video I am going to look at the Quackle analysis of some of the moves from Dweebovision 219. I've already performed the Quackle analysis, which I've recorded on this score sheet, and you can see towards the bottom left here that I dropped 32 points in equity and that 8 of my 11 moves had an equity loss of 4 or less. My opponent dropped 96 points of equity and, well, I've recorded it as 7 out of 11, but actually he made one further move at the end of this game, so 8 out of 12 moves of his were dropping 4 points of equity or less. And most of my opponent's 96 dropped points of equity were from the missed bingo silencer, and that accounted for 58 of his 96 points. Now, 3 of my moves had an equity loss of 5 or greater, and those are the ones which I regard as indicating an error which I think I ought to have spotted during the game or was avoidable in game time. So I'm going to have a look at the Quackle analysis of those 3 moves. So the first one was my org play. And I'll now run the simulation. Okay, well that's 500 iterations, and you can see that the top play was Fogu for 24 points, and my play of org for 19 was the 4th best move. These moves are ranked according to the win percentage, and you can see that org wins 3 fewer games, 3 and a bit fewer games out of 100 compared to Fogu. And looking at the final column, which is the estimate of the number of points you can expect to make by making one play, you can see that Fogu is 8.4 points better than org. Now, when I ran this analysis for the purposes of creating the score sheet, I had an equity loss of about 10. So the fact that this time I run it and the equity loss is only 8 indicates the sort of variation that you can get from running the same sim more than one time. And what that means really is that you shouldn't be overly concerned about the figures being accurate to the last degree. If you can get to within a couple, 2 or 3 equity points, then you don't really need to worry about trying to explain where those 2 or 3 equity points came from, because it could just be statistical variation. So whether the actual figure is 10 as I ran it before or 8 as it is in this simulation, let me see if I can explain why Fogu is 8 points better than org. And in looking for an explanation, the 2 main reasons why one move is better than another tend to be score and rack leave. So comparing the scores, Fogu 24, org 9. So Fogu scored 5 more points. And that already accounts for a significant chunk of the 8 or 10 equity points. So now let's look at the rack leave, EER compared to EO. EER is a better rack leave. It's got a consonant. There is some synergy between the E and the R. So that's going to contribute some of the extra difference. And when you add the 5 points for the Fogu score, plus its superior rack leave, which I can't put a figure on, but it's going to be somewhere between 0 and 5 points, then you're really close to having a full explanation as to why Fogu was a better play. So, going back to the score sheet, the next play to look at is Text, where I played Detox. Detox isn't on the list, so I can add that. And now I can run the simulation. Okay, that's the 500 iterations, and Text is again the best play. And compared to my play of Detox, it wins 5% more games, which is quite a lot. And looking at the valuation, the equity difference is 9 points. It was 8 points when I ran it before. So how can the 9 points of equity be explained? Again, let's look at the score. Well, the score differential is 11 points. Text scores 11 more points, which is very close to the 9 points of equity difference. And if we look at the rack leave, text has a rack leave of DDO and detox has a rack leave of DT. Those rack leaves are quite similar because DDO has the disadvantage of having a duplicate tile, but it's got the advantage of having a vowel. DT has the advantage of having no duplicates, but the disadvantage of having no vowels. And the net effect of those differences is that there is not a huge amount of difference between these rack leaves, and that's reflected in the equity valuation. The equity valuation difference is accounted for almost entirely by the score differential between the two moves. Now, going back to the score sheet, the only other move where I dropped more than 4 equity points was when I played Hui's and Ori Howe simulated best. So this is the Ori Howe play, and this was my play. I'll now run the simulation. And that's 500 iterations. Ori Howe is again the best play, and my play was third best, and it's 11 points behind. When I ran this simulation before, it was 10 points behind. So how can those 10 or 11 equity points be explained? First thing is to look at the score. Ori Howe scores 6 more points, so that's 6 out of the 10 points. What about the rack leave? Well, the rack leave after Ori Howe is not very nice, it's ITU, but the rack leave after Hui's is worse, because it's the same 3 tiles ITU plus another vowel, which makes the vowel consonant balance deteriorate. So the rack leave is also going to contribute to the score differential. So we've got 6 points of score, there's 4 points of equity difference unaccounted for by score. Well, some of that is going to be due to the inferiority of the Hui's rack leave, and at that point you're close enough to accounting for the entirety of the equity difference. So going back to the score sheet, I've now looked at the 3 moves where I dropped 5 or more points, and in each case it was possible by consideration of score and rack leave to account for the difference in equity valuations. And it's important to go through that exercise because it's no good running a simulation identifying that your move wasn't the best move and not understanding why the best move was the best move. So what you should do is, after running the simulation, look at the equity difference between your move and the best move and see if you can account for it. And the way to do that is, first of all, looking at the score, then looking at the rack leave. And then if at that point you're within 2 or 3 points of accounting for the equity differential, there's probably nothing to be gained by looking any further. If you're a long way off, then there is something else going on, and it's something which is happening on the board. That didn't arise in this game, but it will arise in other games. So I hope that analysis was of interest. My name is David Webb, and this has been a video for Dweebovision.